I grew up in Falls Church, Virginia, and I picked up the guitar around 11 or 12. And I just sort of, I started teaching myself chords and then finger picking from there.
Was it because you were a music fan, or sort of what led you to picking up the guitar?
I was a huge music fan, and I would listen to the oldie station, Oldies 100, WBIG, just with a really strong devotion. And I loved, I have an older brother, and he was listening to like the Fat Boys and Digital Underground. So it was a really perfect blend. And I picked up guitar. Guitar was the one thing that I had access to. It was the one instrument that I had access to, and there was one that my dad had sort of played, and we had it around the house.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's great. And you were around when he would play it? So was that sort of an early influence, was hearing your dad play?
I remember him playing only once, actually, but I remember being very taken by it. And he never showed me anything on it, but he didn't play that often either.
Yeah.
But I was a fan of from early on. Yeah, I just was really taken with songwriting. I remember being very young and paying attention to lyrics, paying attention to melody.
So then where did it go from there? When did you first either play with other people or start playing out on your own, or start writing your own songs? How did that happen?
The first thing, well, my mom ran a laundromat, so I had to work there all the time. And in between folding strangers' laundry, because our the most active income stream was the wash, dry, and fold service, and my job was to fold all of that laundry. So and make change at the counter. So in between making change at the counter and folding strangers' clothes, I would play guitar and started working on my writing there. And in high school, I started playing open mic nights, and especially when I got my driver's license, my mom would let me play open mic nights throughout Virginia. I sometimes would go into Maryland and DC.
Nice. And then what would you count as your first true live show? Did you at some point start a band and get a gig
Mhm.
somewhere?
I think my first true live show. Well, you tell me if you think this is the first true live show. My eighth grade English project for Lord of the Flies, I wrote a song and I performed it live for the class. And
Yeah.
from there, I'm
That's
unstoppable.
it.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like straight to the top. So then
Wow.
open
That's it.
mics, yeah, talent show.
Yeah. I would say the first time you're terrified doing that in front of people probably counts as your first live.
Mhm.
Do you still remember the song?
I remember it was in A minor and
Very moody.
very moody, really emphatic strumming. I remember it was difficult to rhyme things with Piggy, but also for Ralph, also rhyming Ralph for that matter was difficult. Uh, that's all I recall,
So it's not
thankfully.
something you still play now and then, like bring it up for an encore.
I'm actually bringing it back for Substack. It's going to be a founding member exclusive.
Yeah, that's the big announcement here. This is going to be the
That's
focus
right.
of Substack for the first year.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you did open mics for a while, and what was the moment when you realized that this was where your career was going to go, that you were really going to commit yourself professionally to being a musician?
It was when I was a sophomore in college. I'd been playing, had been taking and pursuing gigs more seriously. Um, I think right around when I was 19 or 20, I was a huge fan of Laura Veirs, a songwriter, and thankfully my friend now. And I wrote an email to her website, just a cold email, and asking to open for her when she came through Virginia. And her manager at the time was Slim Moon, who founded Kill Rock Stars. And he heard a demo that I had sent, and he asked me to contribute well, he said, we're not going through Virginia anytime soon, but we'll let you know. But he requested that I contribute a song to a songwriter compilation for Kill Rock Stars. And it was around that time, I was probably 20, 21, I knew that as soon as I graduated college, I would tour. I had this tour scheduled for this songwriter compilation for Kill Rock Stars. And so that was the beginning. And when I knew that I would be giving it all I had until some external force told me otherwise.
Nice. So jumping ahead, in a lot of ways, it seems like this last difficult year in which we've all been more or less stuck on our couches has been largely good for writers. People are reading more than they have in years, but that's not the case with musicians. Many of whom, like you, really rely on touring. And so I wonder if you might talk about that a bit, about what the particular challenges have been this past year.
Yeah, it's been, I mean, yeah, wow, a remarkable year for so many reasons, of course. I think what this year has shown, or this past year showed so many musicians, so many touring musicians, that this sort of uneasy complacency agreement that we somehow stumbled into regarding the music marketplace and how we're paid for our work has developed over the years so that nobody buys music anymore. And so we were so incredibly disproportionately reliant upon touring. But everybody, I mean, myself included, those tides were so strong that it was hard. It takes a lot, and it takes a lot of determination and a different kind of verve to say, I will not be on the streaming service. I will not, I will not do all of the things that everybody's doing. And I will take and expose them, just assume that risk of not letting your music be heard and available everywhere it can be. So everyone's touring all the time because that's the only way you can make music, and it's the only stable source of income. And you take that for granted to an extent, but it also is such a tough way of life in so many ways. So it's been shocking. It's been devastating to so many of us because everyone's scrambling, and there's so many that just for the time being can't make the livelihood of a musician is such that for so many it's not possible right now. And it's just so tough to know that we fell into that hole, but we were sort of, all of the momentum was kind of leading us to this place where if we can't tour, what are we going to do?
Mm-hmm. So how have you faced that this past year? What have you done up until this moment to replace that? Touring being the way that you would mainly connect with your audience.
Right. Well, thankfully, for all the flack and all the difficulties of live streaming, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to actually pause and recalibrate, reassess what's important. And I think when you are touring so much and promoting records and getting into that grind, you lose sight, one, of you lose sight of your love for music, but you also lose sight of the reason you get to do it, and it's the connection to your fans. Um, and and so in the past few months, I've been lucky enough to pick up different scoring work or a live stream here or there. It's everyone's getting quite creative and really scrappy and figuring out this patchwork. Um, and which is why I'm so grateful that Substack has this opportunity to connect with fans who I otherwise would not see or be able to communicate with. Um, to afford me that opportunity is something I'm so grateful for.
Yeah. And I've seen you do other really interesting things this year, like on Wendy McNaughton's Draw Together, where you basically, it was an Instagram live show for kids, drawing class for kids, and you basically live scored a drawing class, which was amazing. And some things you've done for Pop-Up Magazine during this time. So it's as difficult as, I mean, we've never had a year like this, but as difficult as it is, it sort of forces you to find new ways to connect that maybe will bring you towards better ways to connect.
For sure.
So like your Substack, let's talk about that. Obviously, we're all incredibly excited to be doing this with you and to be helping you launch this. Tell us a bit about what your plans are.
Well, Dan, thanks for asking. My plans are, so the thing about what appeals to me so much about this idea, and I know it was my idea, but this is separate from the fact that I came up with it, is when I'm in the process of making a record, so many things, everything can be used. And I don't know, it's such a meandering journey to get to what you're going to make your next record about. And, you need life experience for it. You need things to happen. You need to figure out what is so important for you to say that you can't not say it. And that takes a while. And in my experience, this will be my 7th full-length album. So I'm so excited to share with people how I get there. I don't know how I'm going to get there yet. With this last record, it was a trip to Vietnam with my mom. We our band was going on tour and I brought her with me, but I had no idea the emotional heft and impact that would, I knew it would be intense, but there's no way I could know that trip was the reason I decided there's no way that I could no longer not be out in my career due to whatever familial complications, so, and we can talk about that too. But all that to say, I want to bring people along on the journey of whatever work I'm embarking upon that leads me to what this next thing is that I will be putting on record. And it's also such an interesting, I named it For the Record because it is, but it's also such an interesting time in my career. And I feel lighter and more free than I ever have. And I want to present that on my own terms to people who are receptive and who are willing to join me. So it's just remarkable timing for where I'm headed next, and for what where I want my career to go.
I think there's also something so courageous and intimate and vulnerable about revealing the inner workings of the creative process, like both the challenges and the triumphs and the successes and the failures, which you're about to do with your Substack by taking people through the whole process of how to create an album. And it's not going to be without mistakes and frustrations, and people are going to see all of those, which is pretty incredible. You know, I had a conversation recently with George Saunders about something that he does with his MFA students at Syracuse. He gives them all the drafts of a story that comes out that he had recently published in a New Yorker, that, you know, back and forth, all his drafts with Deborah Treisman. So his students actually see each step along the way. So they see the sort of very rough first draft full of mistakes and missteps, and then they see the process along the way. And it feels like what you're planning for Substack is sort of in that same spirit. Is it scary to offer that kind of public access to your sort of personal fount of creativity?
Yes, it's so scary, in fact, that I didn't really think about. You know, it's like this pebble that I've mulled over but kind of glossed over, because if I really thought about it, I probably would not do it. But then we already made the banner. There's so many, we already named the thing, you know. I already wrote that little about page. I can't change it now, but I just, you know, just earlier today, as I was doing the dishes, I said, what am I doing? I have never, ever offered any glimpse into an early demo of a song. That's terrifying to me. I never do it. And I don't even know what, um, I don't know what is compelling me to do it, besides the fact that, and I agree with you, and I love George Saunders, and I've often wished that he would be either like my stepdad or my uncle or somebody, but I know he's not available. But other than this, other than a different level of communication and sincerity and communion, which is something that I've always been interested in, and I always have believed in. And I feel that one of the things I've loved about songwriting and performing live is an emotional connection and the sharing of joy and grief and gratitude, whatever it is. It's a gathering, and we can't have that for a long time. And I feel like offering this side of myself, or this dimension, is a different way to connect, but it gets after that same level of vulnerability that I appreciate in other people and that I aspire to, if nothing else, just so that there's a more sincere transaction. And as in what you were saying about process and making sure it's clear that it totally sucks and it is so hard. I don't know the grief I've caused. I do know it's been years. It can take years in between albums, and the songwriting, you know, that takes 3. I mean, and I'm a slow writer. It's that process has been so deeply harrowing that if I didn't know that other people went through that, I would give up. And part of my process, when I'm so when I'm not sure it's going to happen, I love hearing about people's routines and the challenges they endure, and the really potent levels of self-doubt. I need to hear all of that so that I know that I can proceed as well. You know, and everybody gets through it and they make a thing that I'm a huge fan of. And I think I want to be part of that conversation because I find it so helpful for my own sake.
That's great. I wonder if you could give us just a couple examples of how those really beautiful ideas are going to manifest in your Substack publication. Mm-hmm. It's not just going to be you sharing songs. Like what would people encounter who subscribe to your publication?
Sure. People who subscribe, you know, as I said, I love having these conversations about the struggle and the triumph and the glory of creation. And I have a lot of friends who do similar work or really different work, but we all, orbit in this sort of arts and entertainment world. So there will be conversations with different artist friends that I have about how they push through and what inspires them, and what keeps their work healthy and what keeps their mind healthy as they do work. Um, there's going to be writing from me through every record. I basically, at a certain point, I'm only reading the prose of writers I admire, and then with that sort of wind at my back, I write a lot of short story and personal essay and poetry to pilfer for lyrics, basically. So subscribers will be seeing that work. I've been doing video art. It's basically whatever, everything is grist for the mill, and everything that I've done in the past will be available to sample. Video art, for 2019, I was the guest host of Song Exploder. So that helped me and gave me so much insight into work and asking about how people work. There's going to be Q&As where I have friends who are comedians and they're going to host them. And I've done skits. People can request songs. What else, Dan?
No, demos maybe, as you kind of
Oh,
work
right.
outside.
Yeah, totally. There's demos. Yeah, there's the terrifying demos that I talked about. I'm getting way more into, on the last couple of records, I've been producing a lot more of the beats that end up as the beds of songs. So subscribers will be receiving these instrumental beds or different loops. I love to name things. I thought I would call it momentary loops.
Nice.
Thanks.
Nice. And you've mentioned, like, for audio nerds, the inner workings of production, studio sessions, things like that. I think there's going to be so much that people from all backgrounds would really enjoy. So we're about out of time, but somebody's going to drop in the chat, if they haven't already, a link to a video that you did for your most recent record, which we weren't able to play during the session because of rights reasons, but it would have been the most meta experience people have had in years, because the video takes place it's for the song Phenom off Thao's new record Temple. The structure of it is Zoom, and here we are on Zoom. The video is on YouTube, we're being streamed on YouTube. It just would have been like mirrors within mirrors. So everybody watch it when the session's over. It's amazing. And also to find your publication. So, as we've mentioned, this is launching soon, but it exists already. People can find it at For the Record community, which should also be in the chat. And Thao, roughly when are you expecting to launch?
I'm expecting to launch in early February. Yeah.
Early February, okay. But signups are open, so if anybody that's listening wants to throw their email in, you can do that now. Thao, thank you so much for doing this. It's great to see you. Really excited for this.
Great to see you. Thank you so much, and thank you to Substack for having me.